Red Bull reveals the key reason Verstappen got pole, the McLaren driver's botched pole position, and all the latest F1 news. What's up, Formula One fans? If you thought you'd seen everything the Baku street circuit could throw at qualifying sessions, think again. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix just delivered one of the wildest qualifying sessions in recent memory, and trust me, you're going to want to hear about this absolute chaos that unfolded on the streets of Baku. Picture this: 6 red flags in a single qualifying session. 6! That's not a typo, folks. We just witnessed history being made, but not the kind anyone was hoping for. The previous record was held jointly by Imola back in 2022 and Sao Paulo in 2024, both with their own share of drama. But Baku said, "Hold my tea," and proceeded to absolutely demolish that record. Now, before we dive into this madness, let me set the stage for you. The championship battle this season has been absolutely electric, with Oscar Piastri leading the standings coming into this weekend. The Australian has been on fire this year, and everyone expected him to continue his dominant form in Azerbaijan. Well, spoiler alert, things didn't exactly go according to plan for the McLaren star. Let's start from the beginning, because this story just gets wilder with every session. Q1 kicked off with drivers literally queuing at the end of the pit lane like they were waiting for the hottest nightclub in town. Why? Because everyone knew Baku's narrow streets and unforgiving walls were about to serve up some serious drama. The action started immediately when Alex Albon became the first casualty of the day. The Williams driver clipped the wall at turn 1, breaking his suspension and bringing out the first red flag of what would become an epic day of interruptions. But that was just the appetizer. Enter the blustery conditions that made everything 10 times worse. Esteban Ocon radioed in about debris hitting his car, specifically mentioning a branch on his rear corner. When you've got trees lining sections of the track, and wind strong, enough to knock branches loose, you know you're in for a rough ride. The red flags just kept coming. Nico Hülkenberg smashed into the turn 4 barrier, leaving debris scattered across the track. Then, in the dying seconds of Q1, we got a double whammy. Initially, it looked like Pierre Gasly's off-track excursion was the cause of the red flag, but moments later, his Alpine teammate Franco Colapinto was spotted nose first in the wall after what must have been a heart-stopping moment. By the end of Q1, 5 drivers were heading home early, and Lando Norris had topped the session by just 0.09 of a second over Max Verstappen. Talk about tight margins when the walls are closing in around you. Q2 should have been calmer, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Before any driver had even set a lap time, Oliver Bearman found the barriers at turn 2, bringing out yet another red flag and adding to his disappointment. The young Haas driver was clearly frustrated, apologizing over the radio for what he called a stupid mistake. Here's where things got interesting for the championship contenders. Piastri, who needed a strong qualifying to maintain his championship momentum, found himself in trouble early. The McLaren star tagged the wall with his rear wheel in what looked like a massive moment, and you could almost feel the championship implications through the screen. Meanwhile, the Ferrari drivers were struggling badly. Lewis Hamilton, making his debut season with the Scuderia, found himself fighting just to make it through to Q3. Charles Leclerc was in even worse shape, sitting 14th without a proper lap time after running wide on his first attempt. Both drivers were walking a tightrope over the elimination zone. When the dust settled on Q2, some big names were heading home early. Fernando Alonso, the veteran who knows these street circuits better than almost anyone, was eliminated alongside Hamilton, who just couldn't find the pace in the Ferrari when it mattered most. Then came Q3. And if you thought we were done with the drama, you clearly haven't been paying attention to this story. Liam Lawson reported rain spots as he left the pits, adding another layer of complexity to an already treacherous session. The weather was becoming a factor, making the already difficult Baku circuit even more challenging. Max Verstappen, never one to be fazed by tricky conditions, complained about the slippery surface as rain began to fall more consistently. Carlos Sainz initially went to the top of the timing screens, but everyone knew the session was far from over. Charles Leclerc provided red flag number 5 when he lost control at turn 15, sliding into the barriers and ending his qualifying session with significant disappointment for Ferrari. The team that had started the weekend with high hopes was now watching both their drivers struggle. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Oscar Piastri, the championship leader who needed to maximize every opportunity, made a critical error at turn 3. The McLaren slid wide and found the wall, bringing out the sixth and final red flag of this remarkable session. Just like that, the championship leader's qualifying was over, and he'd be starting from 9th position. The session restarted with just over 3.5 minutes remaining, and Max Verstappen seized his moment. The Red Bull driver, showing exactly why he's been so successful over the years, delivered when it mattered most. His pole position lap was nearly half a second faster than anyone else could manage, proving that when the pressure is highest and conditions are most challenging, experience and skill shine through. Carlos Sainz secured second place for Williams, with the surprising Liam Lawson claiming third for Racing Bulls. For Verstappen, this pole position couldn't have come at a better time, especially with Piastri starting so far down the grid. The championship implications of this qualifying session are massive. Piastri's 9th place start gives Verstappen a golden opportunity to make up serious ground in the standings. Sometimes in Formula One, it's not just about being fast, it's about avoiding the mistakes that can derail your entire weekend. And unfortunately for the championship leader, Baku delivered exactly that kind of heartbreak. This qualifying session will be remembered as one of the most chaotic in recent memory, setting up what promises to be an absolutely incredible race day on the streets of Azerbaijan. The clock is ticking on one of Formula One's greatest careers, and Fernando Alonso just dropped a bombshell that's got the entire paddock talking. The Spanish legend has essentially confirmed that his racing days are numbered, and the end might come sooner than anyone expected. At 44 years old, Alonso stands as Formula One's most experienced driver in history. Since making his debut with Minardi back in 2001, he's carved out a legendary career spanning over 2 decades. With 32 race victories, 106 podium finishes, and 421 Grand Prix starts under his belt, his resume speaks for itself. But now, the 2-time world champion is facing the reality that even legends must eventually hang up their helmets. The Spaniard recently made a startling admission during an interview, revealing that the upcoming 2026 season represents his final opportunity to add meaningful achievements to his already impressive legacy. This isn't just speculation or media conjecture. These are Alonso's own words, delivered with the kind of brutal honesty that has defined his entire career. What makes this revelation particularly significant is the timing. Formula One is preparing for massive regulatory changes in 2026, introducing new aerodynamic rules and power unit specifications that will essentially reset the competitive order. For most drivers, this represents an exciting opportunity to potentially find themselves in a faster car. For Alonso, it's his last roll of the dice. The veteran driver has been refreshingly candid about his motivations and timeline. He's acknowledged that while previous rule changes felt like opportunities for improvement, this one carries emotional weight because he knows it's his final chance to experience such a transformation. There's something both inspiring and melancholic about watching a competitor of his caliber confront the inevitable passage of time. Alonso's situation at Aston Martin adds another layer of intrigue to this story. When he joined the British team in 2023, replacing the retired Sebastian Vettel, he immediately delivered results. His early season performances included multiple podium finishes that reminded everyone why he's considered one of the sport's all-time greats. However, as the season progressed, Aston Martin's competitive edge began to fade, leaving Alonso fighting in the midfield rather than challenging for victories. The team has responded to these struggles with significant investment in both personnel and facilities. Most notably, they've secured the services of legendary designer Adrian Newey, who now holds a part ownership stake and is overseeing their 2026 car development. This represents a massive coup for Aston Martin, given Newey's track record of creating championship-winning machines throughout his career. For Alonso, working with Newey represents something he's never experienced before in his long career. The opportunity to collaborate with arguably the sport's greatest technical mind offers genuine hope that his final seasons might be spent fighting at the front rather than merely making up the numbers. It's a partnership that could potentially deliver the fairy tale ending that every great champion deserves. However, Alonso is approaching this opportunity with realistic expectations rather than blind optimism. He's openly discussed how his future plans depend entirely on Aston Martin's performance next season. If the team delivers a competitive car that allows him to fight for podiums and potentially victories, he's strongly indicated that 2026 will mark his farewell to Formula One. The logic is simple. Better to exit at the top than to continue struggling in uncompetitive machinery. Conversely, if Aston Martin fails to capitalize on their investments and Newey's expertise, Alonso has suggested he might extend his career by one additional season. This approach reflects the mindset of a true competitor who refuses to end his career on a disappointing note. He wants to taste success one final time before walking away from the sport that has defined his adult life. The physical and mental demands of Formula One have clearly influenced Alonso's thinking. At 44, he's already exceeded the typical retirement age for racing drivers, yet he continues to perform at an elite level. His recent comments about evaluating how he feels physically and mentally next season suggest he's carefully monitoring his own capabilities rather than pushing beyond his limits. What makes Alonso's potential retirement particularly poignant is the knowledge that he's achieved so much while perhaps deserving even more. Many observers believe that with different timing or team choices, he could have secured additional world championships beyond his 2 titles, with Renault in 2005 and 2006. His battles with Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, and Max Verstappen have produced some of the sport's most memorable moments. The question of who might replace Alonso at Aston Martin adds another dimension to this story. Speculation has naturally turned to Max Verstappen, given his existing relationships with both Newey and Honda. However, such a move would require Aston Martin to prove their competitiveness and for Verstappen to become available, neither of which is guaranteed. As we approach the 2026 season, Formula One fans should prepare to witness the final chapter of one of the sport's greatest careers. Whether Alonso bows out after achieving his goals or extends his journey by one more year, his eventual retirement will mark the end of an era. For now, we can only watch and hope that this remarkable competitor gets the send-off his legendary career deserves. Did you know that Red Bull just broke a months-long victory drought in the most unexpected way? Their win at Monza wasn't just another race victory. It revealed a fundamental shift in how one of Formula One's most successful teams operates behind the scenes. For weeks, fans watched Red Bull struggle with inconsistent performance while McLaren and Ferrari surged ahead. But then something changed at the Italian Grand Prix, and the transformation has everything to do with a quiet revolution happening inside the team's engineering department. Let me take you inside the story of how Red Bull rediscovered their winning formula and why their new team boss might be the key to everything. The drought was painful to watch. Since their victory at Imola earlier in the season, Red Bull had been searching for answers. Max Verstappen, arguably the world's best driver, was finishing 6th at venues where he should have been fighting for wins. The car that had dominated for years suddenly seemed lost, with the team making extreme setup changes from race to race, a clear sign they didn't understand what was happening. But at Monza, everything clicked. Verstappen didn't just win, he demolished the field by 19 seconds, returning Red Bull to the top step for the first time under their new leadership structure. What happened between those struggles and this commanding victory tells us everything about modern Formula One. The key figure in this transformation is Laurent Mekies, the French engineer who stepped into Christian Horner's former role after the team's management shakeup. Now here's what's fascinating. Mekies himself claims his contribution to the Monza victory was absolutely zero. But dig deeper, and you'll find that's not entirely accurate. The most significant factor in Red Bull's Monza success was a specially designed aerodynamic package. The team brought a completely revised floor body, updated floor fences and edges, plus shorter front wing flaps, specifically tailored for Monza's unique characteristics. This wasn't a last-minute fix. These components take months to research, develop, and manufacture, meaning the groundwork was laid long before Mekies arrived. But here's where the story gets interesting. While Mekies didn't design the winning package, he fundamentally changed how the team uses information to set up their car. And this shift might be even more important than any single upgrade. Helmut Marko revealed something crucial after Monza. The engineers are finally listening to Max Verstappen instead of blindly following computer simulations. For a team built on data and precision, this represents a massive philosophical change. When you have one of the most talented and experienced drivers in the sport, ignoring his feedback in favor of theoretical models seems almost absurd in hindsight. Verstappen himself explained how chaotic things had become before this change. The team was making extreme setup modifications between sessions, shooting left and right without a clear direction. This wasn't the methodical, controlled approach that made Red Bull dominant Presh. It was desperation. Enter Mekies, with his engineering background and fresh perspective. Rather than accepting the status quo, he started asking what Verstappen calls common sense questions. These weren't revolutionary technical insights, but basic engineering inquiries that somehow weren't being asked before. The result was a more open dialogue between drivers and engineers, breaking down barriers that had apparently developed over time. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Verstappen noticed improvements starting at Zandvoort, where the team began experimenting more systematically with setup directions. Some experiments worked, others didn't. But crucially, they were learning from each attempt, rather than randomly trying new configurations. Makis described their recent approach as aggressive experimentation across multiple race weekends, including Budapest and Zandvoort, not just Monza. This systematic testing philosophy represents a return to Red Bull's traditional strengths, methodical development, combined with willingness to take calculated risks. The Monza-specific package demonstrates this perfectly. The team identified that their previous year's sixth-place finish at the circuit was unacceptable, so they invested significant resources into creating targeted solutions. The revised aerodynamics weren't just incremental improvements, they were specifically designed to address Monza's unique demands for low downforce and high top speed. What makes this story even more compelling is how it reflects broader changes in Formula One. Teams generate massive amounts of simulation data, but translating that information into real-world performance requires human insight. The best computer model means nothing if it doesn't match what the driver experiences at 300 kilometers per hour. Red Bull's recent struggles perfectly illustrate this challenge. They had the data, they had the simulations, but they weren't effectively connecting digital predictions with physical reality. Makis didn't solve this by bringing new technology. He solved it by improving communication and asking better questions. The early results suggest this approach is working beyond just Monza. At the Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend, Verstappen was competitive in practice sessions, finishing second and staying within striking distance of McLaren's pace. While not dominant, this consistency represents huge progress from their earlier season struggles. Looking ahead, the real test will be whether Red Bull can maintain this momentum across different circuit types. Monza's characteristics played to their aerodynamic package's strengths, but upcoming races will demand different solutions. The team's new collaborative approach between drivers and engineers will face its biggest challenges on tracks where their specific upgrades might not provide advantages. What's clear is that Red Bull has rediscovered something fundamental about race car development, NE, the importance of human expertise alongside technological capability. Their Monza victory wasn't just about aerodynamic improvements or strategic brilliance. It was about creating an environment where experience, intuition, and engineering data could work together effectively. This transformation offers lessons beyond Formula One about leadership, communication, and organizational change. Sometimes the most powerful improvements come not from revolutionary new approaches, but from asking better questions and listening more carefully to the people who understand the challenges firsthand. Imagine if someone told you that Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc's brain data might be sitting in a Chinese military database right now. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, this story is very real, and it's raising serious questions about the future of athlete privacy and national security. A bombshell investigation has revealed that a neurotechnology company with alleged ties to the Chinese government has been collecting brainwave data from elite athletes worldwide. The list of affected athletes reads like a who's who of international sports, including Formula One star Charles Leclerc, tennis sensation Jannik Sinner, entire Olympic teams, and Manchester City football players. The company at the center of this controversy is BrainCo, a neurotechnology firm that emerged from Harvard University in 2015. Despite its prestigious academic origins and staff of MIT and Harvard scientists, investigative journalists have uncovered concerning connections between BrainCo and Chinese government-linked entities. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond the sports world and into the realm of military applications. So how did we get here? The story begins with a seemingly innocent piece of technology called the FocusCom electronic headband. This device, marketed as a training tool for athletes, looks like ordinary headphones, but serves a much more sophisticated purpose. Athletes wear these headbands during training to improve their focus and concentration, with the device monitoring and analyzing their brainwave patterns in real time. The technology itself represents a fascinating intersection of neuroscience and athletic performance. Elite athletes have always sought competitive advantages, and the ability to train the mind with the same precision as physical muscles represents the cutting edge of sports science. The FocusCom headband promised to unlock the secrets of mental focus that separate champions from competitors. However, the real controversy emerges when we examine what happens to this brain data after collection. According to Dr. Riccardo Ceccarelli from Formula Medicine, who serves as one of BrainCo's most prominent customers, the brainwave information gathered from athletes gets stored in cloud-based systems. This revelation becomes particularly troubling when considering BrainCo's alleged connections to Chinese military research institutions. The concerns intensify when we look at BrainCo's alleged relationships with what are known as the Seven Sons of National Defense. These Chinese universities have such strong suspected ties to military research that the United States government has banned their students from certain graduate programs. The possibility that brain data from Western athletes could flow to institutions with military applications has set off alarm bells among security experts. Duke University professor Nita Farahani provided crucial context to understand why this matters. She explained that what scientists previously dismissed as meaningless noise in brainwave data can now be decoded as valuable signals using advanced artificial intelligence techniques. This means that even older brainwave recordings, if stored in raw format, could be processed with modern AI to extract information that wasn't previously accessible. The professor emphasized that we cannot view this technology in isolation. She pointed to China's simultaneous investments in brain-computer interfaces, cognitive warfare research, and humanoid robotics as evidence of a coordinated strategic approach. The combination of these technologies could potentially create unprecedented capabilities for military applications. BrainCo has vehemently denied these allegations. Company representatives dismissed the investigation as unsubstantiated speculation filled with erroneous biases and misrepresentations. They insist that all collected data gets purged from their systems after each use session, contradicting claims about cloud storage. The company also denied any collaboration with Chinese military entities and stated they have implemented strict compliance measures to prevent their technology from being used for prohibited military purposes. When pressed for more details, BrainCo refused to provide additional clarification, instead accusing investigators of spreading false information. This defensive response has only fueled more speculation about the company's true activities and connections. The broader implications of this story extend well beyond individual athletes. If brainwave data from elite performers is indeed being collected for military purposes, it could represent a new frontier in intelligence gathering. The mental patterns of highly successful individuals might provide insights into training methods for future soldiers, or reveal cognitive strategies that could be weaponized. This controversy also highlights the growing importance of data privacy in our connected world. Athletes who agreed to use brain training technology for legitimate performance enhancement never consented to having their neural patterns potentially studied by foreign military researchers. The incident serves as a wake-up call about the hidden costs of embracing cutting-edge technology without fully understanding where personal data might end up. As investigations continue, this story represents a perfect storm of technological advancement, international competition, and privacy concerns. Whether these allegations prove accurate or not, they demonstrate how quickly the boundaries between sports science and national security can blur in our modern world. The athletes involved, including Charles Leclerc, now find themselves unwitting participants in a much larger geopolitical drama that extends far beyond any racing circuit or tennis court.